I was Caleb Sterling, a corporate drone working 80-hour weeks for a pathetic $45,000 a year. In the next cubicle sat Julian Thorne, the CEO's younger brother. He didn't do a lick of work and pulled in a cool $500,000 base salary. We threw a glass of red wine into an investor's face in front of everyone. His sister, CEO Victoria Thorne, only gave me a cold stare. Caleb, go apologize. You're taking the fall for this. I'd taken the fall countless times, right up until the day a paternity test result was slapped onto my face. I was the true son of the Thorne family. My friends warned me not to go back. That family spoils the fake heir to death, and your sister is obsessed with him. Going back is just humiliating yourself. I laughed. We were all adults here. Who gets a golden ticket to a dynasty just to fight for a little bit of laughable affection? I was going back to take everything that was mine, and then I'd watch them regret, suffer, and kneel before me. Caleb, get over here. The icy female voice was like a whip dipped in poison, snapping against my eardrums. I looked up, locking eyes with CEO Victoria Thorne. Her gaze held zero warmth. Standing in front of her was a man with a pale face, reeking of alcohol, Mr. Vance, an investor worth hundreds of millions. A stark red wine stain was dripping down the hem of Vance's bespoke suit. And the culprit, our company's little prince, Victoria's precious brother Julian Thorne, was hiding behind her, curling his lip with an expression of utter indifference. Vic, the old creep, tried to touch my hand. Splashing him was letting him off easy, Julian muttered, his tone dripping with entitlement and disdain. The blood in my body rushed to my head, only to freeze a second later. It was happening again. The exact same scene, played out countless times. Julian caused a disaster. Victoria fixed it, and I was the trash Vic can use to clean up the mess, the scapegoat responsible for taking the blame. I was a corporate drone making peanuts. Why did I have to clean up the mess of a useless heir making 10 times my salary? Just because his last name was Thorne and mine was Sterling? Victoria's gaze scraped over me like a knife, carrying an unquestionable command. Caleb, didn't you hear me? Go apologize to Mr. Vance. Tell him you slipped and accidentally bumped into Julian, which caused the spill. Her voice wasn't loud, but it exploded like thunder in the banquet hall. The eyes of everyone around us, mocking, amused, pitying, focused sharply on me. I could feel my cheeks burning. My fingernails dug deep into my palms, the sharp pain keeping me tethered to the last shred of clarity. It's like this again. Another one of those matter-of-fact commands. In your eyes, am I, Caleb Sterling, just a dog you can order around at will? I took a deep breath, the anger roiling in my chest, threatening to swallow me whole. For what? I worked overtime until dawn every day, slaving away to sign deal after deal for the company. And Julian? He just had to swipe his badge, play video games, and collect a paycheck 100 times larger than mine with a clear conscience. Now, he causes trouble, and I have to wipe his ass like a servant. I looked at Victoria's exquisite but cold face and suddenly laughed. The laugh was soft, but like a needle, it precisely pricked the tense atmosphere of the room. Victoria frowned. What are you laughing at? Hurry up and go. I didn't move. Instead, meeting her gaze, I spoke clearly, enunciating every word so that it reached everyone's ears. CEO Thorne, I'd like to ask, is my job title project manager or professional scapegoat? The entire banquet hall fell dead silent. It was as if someone had hit the pause button. Everyone looked at me in disbelief. Julian was the first to jump up, pointing at my nose and screaming, Caleb, are you crazy? How dare you talk to my sister like that? Victoria's face darkened completely, a storm brewing in her eyes. Caleb, do you know what you're saying? Do you want to be fired? Fired? I laughed even harder. Fine, fire me right now. But before you do, I need to make something clear. I took a step forward, looking directly at the equally stunned Mr. Vance and said loudly, Mr. Vance, I didn't throw the wine. It was this little young master, Julian Thorne, behind you. He didn't like your unclean hands, so he splashed you himself. If you want an apology, you should ask him. Finished, I turned to Victoria, the corner of my mouth hooking into a cruel smile. CEO Thorne, I'm not taking the fall for this. From today on, I won't carry the burden for any of your Thorne family sins. You, Victoria, was trembling with rage, shock, and loss of control appearing in those beautiful eyes for the first time. Just then, my phone vibrated crazily. I pulled it out. It was my childhood friend, Mac. I answered it right there in front of everyone, putting on speaker. Mac's incredibly excited. Even trembling voice came from the other end. Caleb, holy SHD. Massive news. You'll never guess. I asked my cousin who's a nurse to check. 22 years ago, at the hospital where you were born, there were only 2 male infants born on the same day. One was you, and the other was Julian Thorne. The most critical part is, I got hair samples from you and that old man Richard Thorne and ran a test. The results are back. Mac's voice cracked with excitement, exploding like a thunderclap in the silent banquet hall. Caleb, you are Richard Thorne's biological son. You and Julian were switched at birth. You are Richard Thorne's biological son. Mac's roar echoed through the silent banquet hall via speakerphone, every word smashing into everyone's hearts like a sledgehammer. Time seemed to solidify. I saw the blood drain instantly from Victoria Thorne's perpetually superior face, leaving only shock and disbelief. Behind her, Julian looked as if he'd been struck by lightning, his mouth hanging open wide enough to fit an egg, his eyes filled with fear and confusion. And Mr. Vance, whom I had named, lost his anger entirely, replaced by a complex expression of someone watching a gripping drama. The surrounding guests craned their necks, terrified of missing a single detail of this dynasty scandal. Biological son? Me? Blood rushed insanely to my brain, making my ears ring. I looked down at the phone, the call screen still active. That sentence swirled in my mind like a curse. So that was it. The root of all my suffering for over 20 years, all the injustice, being treated like garbage. It all stemmed from such an absurd mistake. I wasn't born to be trampled under their feet. I was the one who was supposed to enjoy all of this. And Julian, who enjoyed my life, stole my parents, and bossed me around with a clear conscience, was a complete and utter counterfeit. A sense of extreme absurdity and monstrous hatred surged from the deepest part of my heart, instantly sweeping through my limbs. I jerked my head up, my gaze locking dead onto Julian. Meeting my eyes, he shuddered in terror, subconsciously shrinking further behind Victoria. No. Impossible. You're lying. I'm Mom and Dad's son. I am. You pauper. How dare you slander me? Victoria finally snapped out of her shock. She stared at me, her eyes cold and sharp, as if scrutinizing a despicable con artist. Caleb, just for revenge, you'd use such underhanded tactics? She sneered, her tone filled with contempt. Hiring someone to put on a show? Do you think we believe that? Looking at her certainty, the last shred of ridiculous fantasy in my heart completely shattered. Right? Why would she believe it? In her heart, how could her pure and flawless baby brother be a fake? And me, an employee she could sacrifice and trample at any time. How could I be her blood brother? My heart went completely cold. Good. It saved me from holding on to any unrealistic expectations of them. I hung up the phone, shoved it back in my pocket, and met Victoria's scrutinizing gaze, speaking calmly. Whether you believe it or not isn't up to you. My gaze went past her to Julian, who was already scared out of his wits, and my lips curved into a cold smile. Julian, do you dare go to the hospital with me right now and do another paternity test? Julian's face turned ghastly pale, his eyes dodging, not daring to look at me at all. You don't dare. I pressed step by step, my voice laced with amusement. What are you afraid of? Afraid the truth will come out and everything you have now will turn into bubbles. I'm not afraid, Julian retorted shrilly, like a cat whose tail had been stepped on, but that trembling voice exposed the fear in his heart. Victoria shielded Julian behind her like a lioness protecting her cub, glaring at me angrily. Caleb, enough. If you dare spout any more nonsense, I'll call the police immediately and sue you for slander. Call the police? I laughed loudly, as if I'd heard the biggest joke in the world. Great. Call them right now. I'd love to see if the police will believe someone who has nothing to hide or investigate a counterfeit who doesn't even dare to take a paternity test. My laughter, like sharp knives, stabbed fiercely into the hearts of the Thorne siblings. Victoria's face was ashen, her chest heaving violently. She was clearly furious. Just then, an aged but commanding voice came from behind the crowd. Let him speak. The crowd automatically parted to form a path. An elderly man in a mouse suit, hair gray but spirit vigorous, walked over surrounded by a group of bodyguards. It was the chairman of Thorne Enterprises, the helmsman of the family, Richard Thorne. Following behind him was a well-preserved, elegant noblewoman, his wife, and the mother of Victoria and Julian, Eleanor Thorne. Dad, Mom. Victoria, seeing them, acted as if she'd found her backbone. She immediately went to them, pointing at me in anger. Don't listen to his nonsense. Caleb has gone crazy. He's trying to extort our family. Eleanor's face was equally grim. Her look toward me was filled with disgust and rejection, as if looking at something filthy. An ignorant little employee dares to run a scam on our Thorne family? We're his security. Throw him out. Only Richard remained silent. He simply stared at me with eyes as deep and sharp as a falcon's. It was a scrutiny, a probe, a complex emotion I had never seen on his face before. I met his gaze without fear. After a long while, he spoke slowly, his voice raspy and heavy. You say, you are my son. I straightened my spine, meeting everyone's gaze, and spoke word by word, my voice hitting the floor like iron. I'm not saying I am. I'm saying I am the one. I pointed a finger precisely at the trembling Julian. And he is a counterfeit who has occupied the nest for 22 years. Richard's sharp eyes lingered on my face for a full half-minute. He didn't explode in rage like Eleanor and Victoria, nor did he scold me. He just held that scrutiny that almost saw through a person, making one shudder. Dad, don't believe him. He's just a lunatic. Julian screamed, trying to rush forward, but was held back tightly by Victoria. Eleanor chimed in with a face full of disgust. Richard, why waste words with this kind of person? Just have someone throw him out so he stops embarrassing us. Richard, however, raised a hand to stop them. He looked at me again, his voice carrying an unquestionable authority. How do you prove it? Here it comes. That was the sentence I was waiting for. I pulled a transparent sealed bag from my pocket containing a few strands of hair. I had secretly collected these from the sofa in the office when Richard came to inspect earlier. It's simple. I held the bag up in front of him. This is your hair. This is mine. We go to the city's most authoritative testing center right now and do an expedited test in front of everyone. My gaze swept over Julian's pale face, smiling provocatively. Of course, for fairness, this young Master Julian must come along too. 3 samples compared, and the truth will reveal itself. Julian's lips trembled, unable to say a single word. Victoria's face turned extremely ugly. She stared at me, the murderous intent in her eyes almost solidifying. She knew I wasn't joking. If I didn't have absolute confidence, I wouldn't dare blow things up to this extent in front of Richard Thorne. The atmosphere in the room was heavy to the extreme. All the guests held their breath, waiting for Richard's decision. This decision would concern a shocking scandal in a top dynasty and the vastly different lives of 2 young men. Good. Finally, Richard spat out the word. He gave me a deep look, then turned to the head of bodyguards behind him. Zhang, arrange it personally. Contact the best testing center in the city. I want the fastest speed. Also, lock down the venue. I don't want a single word of what happened here today to leak out. Yes, Chairman. The head bodyguard immediately went to execute the order. Eleanor and Victoria's expressions changed simultaneously. Richard, are you crazy? You're really going to entertain this kid's nonsense? Eleanor shrieked. Cease. We can't go. I don't want to go. Julian was scared out of his wits, clutching Victoria's arm tightly. Richard's face darkened, and the pressure of a man who had been in power for a long time instantly shrouded the room. Did you not hear my words? Eleanor and Victoria instantly fell silent. No matter how domineering they were, they didn't dare openly defy Richard's decision. Victoria could only glare at me with hatred, her eyes seeming to say, just you wait. If the result isn't what you said, I'll make sure you die without a burial place. I shrugged, completely indifferent. Soon, the head bodyguard had everything arranged. Richard, Julian, and I, escorted by several bodyguards, headed to the testing center. Victoria and Eleanor stayed in the banquet hall to pacify the detained guests. On the way, the atmosphere in the car was oppressive enough to wring water from the air. Julian slumped in his seat, face ashen like a pile of mud. Richard closed his eyes to rest, showing no emotion. Only I watched the streetscape flying backward outside the window, my heart filled with a cold calm. I knew that from this moment on, my life would be completely rewritten. 3 hours later, we returned to the banquet hall. The expedited report sat on the table in front of Richard. Those few thin sheets of paper now weighed 1,000 pounds. The banquet hall was still silent as a grave, everyone's eyes focused on that report. Eleanor and Victoria stood nervously behind Richard, staring at the report as if trying to burn a hole through it. Julian slumped in a chair, not even having the courage to look. Richard reached out, moving slowly to pick up the report. He read very slowly, very carefully, as if confirming every word. Time passed second by second, each one feeling as long as a century. Finally, he put down the report. Smack! A crisp slap echoed through the entire hall. Richard stood up and slapped Eleanor fiercely across the face. The force was so great it knocked her directly to the floor. "You bitch!" Richard's eyes were bloodshot, like an enraged lion. Pointing at Eleanor and the limp Julian, his voice trembled. "Look at what you've done. Our Thorne family has actually raised someone else's son for 22 years. He suddenly turned to me, his eyes filled with guilt, shock, pain, and a complex emotion I couldn't read. He opened his mouth, his voice hoarse beyond recognition. "Child, you are my biological son." Boom! The truth was out. The entire banquet hall went into an uproar. "No, impossible. The report must be fake. Caleb forged it." Eleanor clutched her swollen cheek, scrambling up from the floor with disheveled hair, lunging like a madwoman toward the report, wanting to tear it to shreds. A bodyguard was quick enough to block her. "Dad, I don't believe it. This is impossible." Victoria completely lost her composure too. She snatched the report, scanning 10 lines at a glance. The blood drained from her beautiful face, leaving only teetering despair. The conclusion on the report was there in black and white, clear and unambiguous. According to DNA genetic marker analysis results, supports Richard Thorne as the biological father of Caleb Sterling. Excludes Richard Thorne as the biological father of Julian Thorne. The evidence was ironclad. Julian, the baby brother she had doted on since childhood, held in her palm for fear of dropping him, held in her mouth for fear of melting him, actually had not a single drop of blood relation to their Thorne family. And Caleb, the subordinate she had bossed around, treated like garbage for 3 years, was her biological brother from the same mother. This realization was like a sledgehammer, ruthlessly smashing all her pride and perceptions of the last 20-plus years. She stumbled back 2 steps, looking at me with dull eyes, then at Julian paralyzed on the floor, muttering to herself, "How could it be like this? How?" The most broken person in the room was undoubtedly Julian. When Richard said those words, he went completely limp. At this moment, he was like a puppet with its strings cut, paralyzed on the floor, eyes empty, constantly repeating, "I'm not a fake. I'm not. I'm the young master of the Thorne family." I watched this farce with cold eyes. Watching Eleanor's madness, Victoria's breakdown, Julian's despair. There was not a shred of sympathy in my heart, only a cold, vindictive pleasure of revenge served. This was what I wanted. I never wanted their belated affection or guilt. What I wanted was to watch everything they took pride in come crashing down in front of me. Richard took a deep breath, forcibly suppressing the agitation and anger in his heart. He walked up to me, extending a slightly trembling hand, wanted to pat my shoulder. "Child, all these years, you've suffered." His voice was full of guilt. "Come home. From today on, you are the only young master of the Thorne family." I turned my body slightly, avoiding his hand. I raised my eyes, looking at him calmly. "Chairman Thorne, I think you've misunderstood something." Richard paused. "What?" "First, my name is Caleb Sterling, not child." "Second," I paused, my gaze sweeping over everyone present, my voice clear and cold. "I will not go home with you, because in my eyes, that place has never been my home." My words froze the guilt on Richard's face. Eleanor stopped her tantrum. Victoria stopped her muttering. Everyone looked at me in shock. They probably thought that after the truth was revealed, I would throw myself at them in tears of gratitude, enacting a touching father-son reunion. Unfortunately, I wasn't an actor in their script. What do you mean by that?" Richard frowned deeply. "Are you still blaming us? I know, we wronged you, but we will compensate you. Whatever you want, luxury cars, mansions, money. Just name it, Dad will satisfy you." "Compensate?" I looked like I had heard the funniest joke. "Chairman Thorne, my life was stolen for 22 years. I suffered for 22 years. I slaved away under your daughter, was bossed around by your fake son, had my dignity rubbed into the dirt. And now you tell me money can compensate for that." My voice rose sharply, filled with suppressed anger and mockery. "Let me tell you, Richard Thorne, I, Caleb Sterling, don't give a damn about your Thorne family's dirty money." I walked up to him step by step, staring straight into his shocked eyes, articulating every word. "What I want isn't compensation. What I want is to take back everything that belongs to me. Thorne Enterprises has shares that belong to me. I want you to return my portion to me. Now, immediately." "What did you say?" As soon as my voice fell, the first one to jump up wasn't Richard, but Victoria. Like a leopardess whose territory had been invaded, she bristled instantly, rushing in front of me and shouting sternly, "Caleb, don't push your luck. Dad already agreed to compensate you, and you still want shares? You're delusional." I sneered, looking at her pretty face twisted by anger. "Pushing my luck? Victoria, get this straight. I'm not asking you. I'm taking back what I deserve. Thorne Enterprises was founded by my grandfather and father. According to inheritance laws, after my mother passes or via trust structures, shares are designated for biological heirs. I'm just taking back my half. Is there a problem? My speech was well-reasoned, leaving Victoria speechless. She was indeed a strong businesswoman, but in this moment, faced with a massive emotional shock and legal realities, her proud logic and eloquence seemed so pale. She shook with anger, but couldn't find a reason to refute me. Enough! Richard shouted low, stopping Victoria. He looked at me deeply, his eyes complicated to the extreme. There was shock, appreciation, and a trace of imperceptible wariness. He probably never expected that the little employee who had always been submissive in his impression would have such clear logic and such a powerful aura. Even less did he expect that my goal from the start wasn't cash, but controlling rights in Thorne Enterprises. You want shares? Phoenix. Richard pondered for a moment, speaking slowly. But not now. You know nothing about the company. Parachuting in suddenly will only cause instability. How about this? I'll arrange a vice president position for you first. You study under Victoria, and once you're familiar with the business, No need. I interrupted him unceremoniously. Chairman Thorne, put away your pie-in-the-sky tricks. I don't need to study, and I certainly don't need to study under a CEO who treats the company like her own backyard and lets her useless brother run wild. My words were like a loud slap across Victoria's face. Her complexion instantly turned deathly white. I ignored her and continued to Richard. My request is simple. Within 1 week, get the equity transfer paperwork done. Otherwise, I don't mind hiring a lawyer and making today's little show public. When that happens, how much will Thorne Enterprises stock drop? How much face will the Thorne family lose? Chairman Thorne, weigh it yourself. A naked threat. I was threatening him, using the reputation and interests he cared about most to force him to submit. Richard's face turned iron blue, his fists clenched tightly at his sides, veins popping on the back of his hands. Having navigated the business world for decades, when had he ever been threatened to his face like this? And the one threatening him was the biological son he had just found. This feeling, aggrieved, angry, yet helpless, because he knew I was telling the truth. Once a scandal like switching children in a wealthy family was exposed, the blow to Thorne Enterprises would be devastating. He couldn't afford to gamble. Good, good, good. Richard said the word good 3 times in a row, laughing in anger. Truly, my good son, you really have my style from back in the day. He stared at me, eyes full of anger, but eventually it turned into a weary sigh. I promise you, within a week, I'll have the lawyers prepare the equity transfer agreement. Dad! Victoria and Eleanor exclaimed simultaneously. Shut up! Richard shouted sternly, his cold eyes sweeping over them. What our family owes him must be repaid. Finished. He seemed to age 10 years in an instant, waving his hand wearily. That's all for today. Everyone disperse. He glanced at Julian, who was paralyzed on the floor and had completely lost his mind, a trace of disgust and finality flashing in his eyes. As for him, from today on, he is no longer a Thorne. Throw him out. I don't want to see him again. No, Dad, don't kick me out. I was wrong. I was really wrong. As soon as Richard's voice fell, Julian, who had been limp as mud, seemed to be injected with a stimulant. He sprang up from the floor, scrambling to Richard's feet, hugging his legs tightly and wailing. Dad, I've been by your side since I was little. I am your son. You can't discard me. If I leave the Thorne family, I'll die. He cried with snot and tears flowing, utterly wretched, showing none of the arrogance of the little prince from before. Eleanor also threw herself over, kneeling before Richard, begging bitterly, Richard, I beg you. Julian is the son we raised for 22 years. Even without a blood bond, there are feelings. Kicking him out is like taking his life. Feelings? Richard kicked Julian away, looking down at Eleanor, his eyes full of hatred. It is because of your feelings that my biological son suffered for 22 years outside. Because of your feelings, our Thorne line was almost broken. You still have the face to talk to me about feelings. He pointed at Julian, roaring at the bodyguards. What are you standing there for? Throw him out. I said, I don't want to see him again. Yes. 2 bodyguards immediately stepped forward, dragging Julian, who was still struggling and crying desperately, toward the exit like a rag doll. Cease. Sis, save me. I don't want to go. Cease. Julian reached out desperately to Victoria, letting out a wretched cry for help. Victoria trembled all over, subconsciously wanting to step forward. But just as she moved a step, she met my cold gaze. That look was full of mockery and warning, as if saying, if you dare save him, you are my enemy. Victoria's steps stopped abruptly. She looked at Julian being dragged toward the door, his cries becoming more miserable, then looked at me, her face full of pain and struggle. On one side, the brother she had doted on for 22 years, treated like her life. On the other, the biological brother who had just returned, held the lifeline of her father and the company, and was hostile toward her. For the first time, she was caught in a dilemma. Cease. With a miserable scream, Julian was mercilessly thrown out of the banquet hall's main doors, hitting the cold pavement heavily. The doors slammed shut with a bang, cutting off all the crying and begging. The world was quiet. I looked at Victoria's face, pale as paper and full of pain and tears, and felt incredibly gratified. Victoria, can you feel pain too? Watching your beloved brother kicked out of the house, powerless to help. Does it hurt? Did you ever think about how much my heart hurt when you forced me to take the fall for him, when I was publicly humiliated by him? Now all of this is just the beginning. Richard, having dealt with Julian, seemed to have exhausted all his strength. He said to me wearily, Caleb, no, Caleb Thorne. From today on, you are Caleb Thorne. Come home with me first. I've always kept a room for you. No need. I interrupted him coldly again. Before the equity transfer agreement is signed, I won't step a foot into the Thorne house. Also, my name is Caleb Sterling, and I will only be Caleb Sterling. After speaking, I didn't look at the marvelous array of expressions on their faces. I turned and walked away. Reaching the door, I stopped and looked back at Mr. Vance, who had been splashed with wine earlier. He was watching all this with great interest. Seeing me look at him, he even raised his glass to me. I gave him a faint smile, then spoke loudly. Everyone, have you seen enough of the show today? If you have, please go back. Remember, if I hear a single whisper of what happened here today. My gaze became sharp. You will bear the consequences. Everyone present was shrewd. They naturally heard the threat in my words. People nodded and bowed, indicating they saw nothing and heard nothing. Satisfied, I withdrew my gaze, pulled open the doors, and under everyone's awe-filled stares, strode away. Outside, the night breeze was cool. I took a deep breath, feeling the gloom of over 20 years swept away. Thorne family, I'm back. But I didn't come back for a reunion. I came back for revenge. I didn't go back to that tiny rental apartment. Instead, I went straight to the city's top 5-star hotel, the Plaza, and booked a presidential suite using the black card Richard had forced into my hand. Standing in front of the massive floor-to-ceiling windows, looking down at the glittering city nightscape, I felt for the first time what it meant to have the world beneath my feet. For over 20 years, I had lived at the bottom of this city, looking up at these skyscrapers, fantasizing about one day having a place of my own here. And now, not only did I have a place, I was going to become the master of this city. Caleb, you kid, you've really made it big now. Staying in the presidential suite. Mac's boisterous voice came from behind. He was darting around the room like a monkey, touching this, looking at that, his face full of excitement. I turned around, looking at him, a genuine smile appearing on my face for the first time that night. Mac, today, it was all thanks to you. If not for his crucial phone call, I might still be in the banquet hall, preparing to accept another one of Victoria's humiliations. Hey, what's mine is yours. Mac waved his hand dismissively, then leaned in, winking and asking, Hey, seriously, what happened after? Did the Thorne family hug you and cry, begging for your forgiveness? I scoffed and briefly recounted what happened later. Mac listened, his eyes popping out. Holy SHD, Caleb, you're a beast. Demanding shares straight up and kicking that fake air out? You're driving them to the edge. Driving them. I picked up a glass of red wine, swirling it gently. They stole my life for 22 years. Now, I'm just collecting a little interest. Mac looked at me, his expression complicated. But Caleb, they're your biological parents and sister after all. Biological? I interrupted him, my voice filled with sarcasm. Where were they when I needed them most? Where were they when I was bullied by Julian and humiliated by Victoria? Their so-called guilt now is only because my identity has changed and I pose a threat to them. If the test results were fake today, do you believe I might be at the bottom of the river right now? Mac fell silent. He knew I was speaking the truth. In those wealthy families, affection was worthless in the face of profit. So what do you plan to do next? Mac asked. Really enter Thorne Enterprises? Of course. I took a sip of wine, cold light flashing in my eyes. Didn't Victoria always think I was useless, a waste of space who only caused her trouble? Then I want her to see with her own eyes how this waste dragged her down from the CEO's position, step by step. I want her to understand that everything she takes pride in is nothing but child's play in my eyes. Mac listened, his blood boiling, but he was also worried. But Victoria isn't easy to deal with. She's run the company for years and has deep roots. You, a newcomer going in, might not be able to beat her. Who said I'm a newcomer? I smiled. Don't forget, I worked under her as a project manager for 3 years. I know better than anyone who her confidants are, who the fence-sitters are, and which projects have skeletons in the closet. For 3 years, I suffered rejection and suppression, but because of that, I knew the internal situation of the company like the back of my hand. Victoria thought I was an ant under her foot, not knowing this ant had long deciphered the structure of her entire nest. Victoria's biggest weakness is that she's too arrogant, and she spoils Julian too much. The corner of my mouth hooked into a calculating arc. To pave the way for Julian, she did quite a few improper things secretly and offended quite a few people. These will all be my weapons to take her down. Just then my phone rang. A strange number. I answered, and a cautious, somewhat fawning voice came from the other end. Excuse me, is this CA? No, Mr. Thorne. I recognized the voice. It was Manager Stevens, a project manager at my level who was best at steering with the wind. It's me. What's up? My tone was flat. Mr. Thorne, where are you right now? I have some important intelligence regarding a company project. I want to report to you in person. Stevens' voice was incredibly urgent. I smiled. See, the fish are already biting. Victoria, your good days are over. The next day, I slept until I woke up naturally. Sunlight spilled onto the soft king-size bed through the floor-to-ceiling windows. I stretched, feeling comfortable all over. This life, no alarm clock, no squeezing into the subway, no looking at the boss's angry face, was real living. After washing up, room service had already delivered a sumptuous breakfast. As I ate leisurely, I turned on financial news. Sure enough, Thorne Enterprises' stock price showed abnormal fluctuations at the opening today. Although the amplitude wasn't large, clearly, the events of the banquet hall last night had leaked. Dynasty secrets were always the most sensitive nerve of the capital market. I was watching with interest when my phone rang. It was Richard. Caleb, are you up? I'll send the driver to pick you up. I'll take you to the company today to get familiar with the environment. His voice carried a deliberate gentleness and closeness that made me nauseous. No need. I'll get there myself. Also, I go by Caleb Sterling. Please remember that. I hung up directly, not bothering to listen to another word. After breakfast, I changed into an Armani suit I bought yesterday and checked myself in the mirror. The man in the mirror stood tall, his brows sharp, no longer the submissive corporate drone Caleb Sterling in a cheap shirt from yesterday. Clothes make the man. When I appeared downstairs at Thorne Enterprises driving the global limited edition Bugatti Veyron Richard had forced on me, I attracted almost everyone's attention. The company security guards froze at first, then immediately recognized me, their faces piling up with fawning smiles as they trotted over to open the door for me. Mr. Sterling, you're here. I nodded faintly, tossed the keys to him, and walked straight into the lobby. Everywhere I passed, employees gave me the eye, their looks full of awe, curiosity, and a trace of fear. The rumors from yesterday's banquet had clearly spread internally. They were probably all guessing how I, the newly minted true heir, would treat the old guard. I ignored these gazes and walked straight to the CEO's exclusive elevator. Ding! The doors opened. Victoria was standing inside. Seeing me, her face instantly darkened. Today, she wore a capable black business suit. Makeup exquisite, aura still powerful, but her brow carried a trace of unconcealable fatigue and gloom. Clearly, she hadn't had a good night. I acted like I didn't see her and walked straight into the elevator, pressing the button for the top floor CEO office. It was just the two of us in the elevator. The atmosphere was awkward and oppressive. What are you doing here? Finally, Victoria spoke first, her voice cold. Coming to work? Obviously. I put my hands in my pockets, looking at our reflections in the elevator mirror, speaking plainly. CEO Thorne couldn't have forgotten that I'm about to become the company's second largest shareholder. Isn't it appropriate to care about the company's operations? Shareholder. Victoria sneered, her tone full of mockery. Caleb, don't think getting a few shares lets you dictate things in the company. I built Thorne Enterprises to where it is today. Here, I call the shots. Is that so? I turned my head, looking straight into her eyes, a playful smile on my lips. Then let's wait and see. The elevator doors opened. I walked out first. Victoria watched my back, gritting her teeth in anger, eyes full of unwillingness and rage. At the CEO's office door, her secretary saw me and immediately stood up respectfully. Mr. Sterling. I nodded and moved to open the door to go in. Stop. Victoria shouted sternly. That is my office. I stopped, looking back at her like I was looking at an unreasonable clown. I know, but soon it won't be. Finished. I ignored her and walked straight to the door of another office opposite the CEO's suite. That was the vice president's office prepared for Julian. He hadn't come in a single day. It had been empty. I pushed the door open and walked in. Then, in front of Victoria and all the passing employees, I lifted my foot and kicked the nameplate reading Vice President Julian Thorne on the door into pieces. From today on, this place belongs to Sterling. My action was undoubtedly a naked provocation. Victoria's face instantly turned purple with rage. She glared at me, her chest heaving violently, as if she might rush up and fight me to the death the next second. The surrounding employees were so scared they didn't dare breathe loudly, heads down, pretending to be air. Caleb, don't go too far. Too far. I clapped the dust off my hands, walking slowly up to her, looking down at her. CEO Thorne, we haven't even started yet. You used me like a dog for 3 years. Your good brother humiliated me like trash for 3 years. Now I just kick a sign, and you think that's too far? My voice wasn't loud, but like knives, it stabbed fiercely into her heart. You. Victoria was rendered speechless by me, her pretty face alternating between green and white. Me what? I pressed closer, leaning to her ear, whispering in a voice only the two of us could hear. Victoria, let me tell you, this is just the beginning. I will return all the pain and humiliation you inflicted on me, 1,000 times, 10,000 times over. I will make you watch with your own eyes how you lose everything you possess, step by step. Power, status, and that counterfeit brother you treasure. Straightening up, I admired her face, slightly twisted by fear and anger, and smiled satisfied. Then, I turned and went into my office, slamming the door shut with a bang, shutting out all her rage and unwillingness. The office was spacious, luxuriously decorated, infinitely better than my dog kennel rental. I sat down heavily in the leather boss chair and pressed the internal line. Get Manager Stevens from the project department to my office immediately. Less than 3 minutes later, the office door was knocked. Manager Stevens, who called me yesterday, rushed in like the wind, a fawning smile piled on his face. Mr. Sterling, you asked for me. He bowed and scraped, his posture extremely low. I pointed to the chair opposite. Seat? Oh no, I wouldn't dare, Mr. Sterling. I'll just stand. I said sit. My tone hardened. Stevens shuddered and quickly sat down obediently, but only dared to use half the seat, back straight as a ramrod. Watching him, I laughed inwardly. This is human nature. When you are weak, bad people are everywhere. When you are strong, everyone around you is a good person. Manager Stevens, on the phone yesterday, you said you had important intelligence to report? I cut to the chase. Yes. Stevens hurried to pull a file from his briefcase, handing it over with both hands. Mr. Sterling, please take a look. This is the data on the South City project. I took it, flipping through. The South City project was a major initiative Thorne Enterprises was pursuing recently, with an investment of $5 billion. The person in charge was Victoria. What's the problem with this project? I asked. Stevens leaned in, lowering his voice, speaking secretively. Mr. Sterling, this project has had huge problems from the start. The partner responsible for bidding is Apex Construction, and the VP of Apex is Julian's uncle. My eyes narrowed instantly. Go on, CEO Thorne. Oh no, Victoria, in order to let Julian claim credit in the company, privately reached an agreement with Apex. Our company contracted the project to them at 20% above market price. In return, Apex would credit all the success of the project to Julian's name. This is simply using company money to buy a resume for Julian. A $5 billion project, 20%. That's a whole $1 billion in price difference. That money definitely went into their own pockets. Stevens spoke with righteous indignation, as if he were the one who hated corruption the most. I sneered internally. If he were truly this righteous, he would have reported it to Richard long ago. Why wait until now to tell me? But that didn't matter. What mattered was that he had handed me a sword sharp enough to severely wound Victoria. Is there evidence for these things? I asked. Yes, of course. Stevens quickly pulled out a voice recorder. Mr. Sterling, listen. I secretly recorded this when Victoria and that VP from Apex were having dinner last time. I took the recorder and pressed play. Inside, the conversation between Victoria and another middle-aged man came through clearly. VP Wong, I'm counting on you this time. Our Julian is still young. He needs some beautiful achievements on his resume to convince the public. Victoria, don't worry. Between us, it's just $1 billion, small change. After this is done, Julian will be the biggest hero of the South City project. Listening to the recording, the corner of my mouth hooked into a cruel arc. Victoria, oh Victoria, you truly are a good sister. For your counterfeit brother, you really dare to do anything. Private transfers, benefit funneling, harming company interests. Any single one is enough to ruin your reputation. Good work. I put away the recorder, looked at Stevens, and nodded with satisfaction. Make 100 copies of this file. At 3 o'clock this afternoon, the company is holding a general shareholder meeting. I want to personally present a big gift to your good CEO at the meeting. 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Thorne Enterprises' top-floor conference room. The long conference table was filled with company shareholders and executives. Richard sat at the head, his face gloomy. Victoria sat to his left, expression cold, her eyes occasionally scraping toward my position opposite her like knives. And I leaned back leisurely in my chair, playing with the voice recorder in my hand, as if everything about to happen had nothing to do with me. The atmosphere in the conference room was frighteningly oppressive. Everyone knew that today's shareholder meeting, ostensibly to discuss company development, was actually an internal power struggle of the Thorne family. Whether the true son would seize power or the princess would defend her position, it all came down to today. Ahem. Richard cleared his throat, breaking the silence. I called everyone here today mainly for two things. First, formally introducing everyone. This is my son, Caleb Sterling. He pointed at me. From today on, he will hold 30% of the company's shares, becoming the second largest shareholder. As soon as the words fell, the room erupted. Although there were rumors, hearing Richard confirm it personally caused a massive shock. 30%. This meant that I, the newly returned true son, instantly possessed enough power to rival Victoria. Everyone's eyes focused on me, full of inquiry and awe. I met the crowd's gaze, stood up slowly, and smiled slightly. Hello, everyone. I'm Caleb Sterling. I look forward to working with you. My attitude was neither humble nor arrogant, carrying its own powerful aura. Victoria looked at me, the hatred in her eyes almost spilling over. Richard raised his hand to press down the noise, signaling for quiet, then continued, second thing, regarding the South City project. Before he could finish, I interrupted him directly. Regarding the South City project, I happen to have a small discovery I'd like to share with the shareholders. I stood up and personally distributed the 100 copies of material Stevens had prepared to everyone present. This is the partner data for the South City project, as well as our company's quoted price. Everyone could take a look. The shareholders picked up the documents, reading with confusion. Victoria saw the document, her face changing instantly. She looked at me sharply, her eyes full of shock, anger, and a trace of imperceptible panic. Caleb, what is the meaning of this? What right do you, a newcomer, have to speak at a shareholder meeting? She shouted sternly, trying to stop me. What is the meaning? I laughed. I just want to ask CEO Thorne, why is the contract price our company gave to Apex Construction a full $1 billion higher than the market price? Did this $1 billion go into the company account or into someone's private pocket? My question exploded in the conference room like a heavy bomb. The shareholders' faces all changed. They looked at Victoria, their eyes full of doubt and scrutiny. You're lying. Victoria stood up abruptly, pointing at me and roaring. Apex is the best construction company in the industry. Their quote is high because their engineering quality is guaranteed. This is a normal commercial premium. Is that so? The smile on my face grew. Then I wonder, does the fact that Apex's VP is Julian's biological uncle count as a normal commercial relationship? Also, regarding this recording, I wonder how CEO Thorne explains it. I pressed the play button on the recorder. Victoria, don't worry. Between us, it's just $1 billion, small change. After this is done, Julian will be the biggest hero of the South City project. The clear dialogue echoed in the silent conference room. Every word was like a loud slap across Victoria's face. Her complexion turned pale as paper in an instant. Her body swayed, as if all her strength had been drained. It was over. She knew it was all over. In the face of ironclad evidence, any defense seemed so pale and weak. The conference room was deathly silent. All the shareholders looked at her with angry and disappointed eyes. They had trusted her for so many years, entrusted the company's future to her hands, and in return, for the sake of a fake brother, she recklessly embezzled and harmed everyone's interests. Victoria Thorne. An elderly shareholder slammed the table, standing up to reprimand her furiously. We trusted you so much, and this is how you repay us? What do you take the company for? Your family's ATM? That's right. You must give us an explanation. Resign. You must resign. Instantly, the crowd was enraged. Those shareholders who once supported and upheld her had now turned into blades condemning her. Victoria stood there, isolated and helpless, like a sinner being publicly executed. She looked pleadingly toward Richard at the head of the table. However, Richard just closed his eyes, looking heartbroken, as if he hadn't seen her cry for help at all. He knew the tide had turned. To save Thorne Enterprises, to quell the public anger, his only choice was to sacrifice Victoria. Seeing her father's indifferent attitude, the last light in Victoria's eyes completely extinguished, she slowly turned her head, her gaze locking dead onto me. In that look, there was no anger, no unwillingness, only a deep-seated, boundless hatred. I met her gaze, slowly raised the recorder in my hand, aimed it at her, and made an explosion gesture. Then, silently, I mouthed 2 words to her. Game over. The result of the shareholder meeting was no suspense. Victoria was removed from the CEO position on the spot and required to hand over all power, subject to an internal investigation by the board. When she walked out of the conference room despondently, she looked like a puppet with its soul removed. The once imperious queen was now as wretched as a stray dog. And I, unanimously recommended by all shareholders, became the new interim CEO of Thorne Enterprises. Sitting in the spacious, bright office that once belonged to Victoria, looking at the familiar city skyline outside the window, a sense of control I had never felt before rose spontaneously. From today on, I was no longer the drone pushed around by others. I was the king of Thorne Enterprises. Mr. Sterling. No, CEO Sterling, you are amazing. Stephen stood in front of me, face red, excitement overflowing. Everything that happened in the conference room today was more thrilling to him than a movie. He witnessed with his own eyes how I used thunderous methods to pull down a deep-rooted CEO in just one day and took the throne of power myself. This is just the beginning, I said lightly, tapping my finger on the desk. Victoria has run the company for many years and has many cronies. Although she's removed now, there's no guarantee they won't pull tricks in the dark. Do one thing for me. I looked at Stevens, a cold light flashing in my eyes. List all the management personnel closely related to Victoria, especially those who helped her and Julian bully me in the past. Stevens shuddered, immediately understanding my meaning. This was settling scores after the harvest. Yes, CEO Sterling. I'll do it right away. He immediately took the order his steps lighter. When a new king ascends, a few chickens must be killed to warn the monkeys. And he was honored to be the sharpest knife in the new king's hand. After Stevens left, the office returned to silence. I leaned back in the boss chair, closed my eyes, and enjoyed this hard-won victory. But I knew very well this was far from over. Toppling Victoria was only the first step of my revenge plan. Next, what I had to do was trample the entire Thorne family under my feet. I would make them pay the most painful price for that 22-year mistake. Just then, the office door knocked. I opened my eyes. Enter. The door opened, and the person who walked in was Richard. He looked even older than yesterday, the white hair at his temples seeming to have increased. He walked to my desk, pulled out a chair, and sat down, silent for a long time before speaking hoarsely. Caleb, do you really have to go this far? Victoria. Although she did wrong, she's your sister after all. What good does it to you to drive her to a dead end? I looked at his face, full of exhaustion and heartache, feeling only incredibly ridiculous. My sister, I sneered, when I was used by her like a dog. Did she ever think I was her brother? When I was ridden over and tyrannized by that fake Julian, did she ever think I was her brother? Now that she's betrayed by everyone, you come and talk to me about sibling affection? Richard, don't you think it's too late? My words were like knives, stabbing fiercely into his heart. He opened his mouth, but couldn't say a word, his face full of guilt and powerlessness. Everything I did today is her own fault. I stood up, walked to the floor-to-ceiling window, turning my back to him, voice cold. Not sending her directly to prison is already my greatest mercy. As for the good, I turned around, looking down at him. Watching someone once high and mighty crashing down in front of me, in pain, that is the greatest good. Richard was shocked beyond measure by my words. He probably never thought his biological son's heart would be filled with such deep hatred and terrifying desire for revenge. You, he pointed at me, trembling with anger. You are simply a devil. A devil. I laughed brilliantly. That's right, I am a devil. A devil created by your own hands, just to take revenge on you. So, put away your ridiculous fatherly love, Richard. From a moment you switched children, you and I became only enemies. Richard stormed off in anger. Watching his staggering back, there wasn't a ripple in my heart. Enemies? Yes, from a moment I decided on revenge. All of them were my enemies. Kindness to the enemy is cruelty to oneself. This principle was exchanged with blood and tears during my years of struggle at the bottom of society. In the following days, I conducted a massive purge of the company with thunderous force. All of Victoria's old subordinates listed by Stevens were either demoted, transferred, or fired outright by me for various reasons. The entire company was jittery. Everyone witnessed the iron-fisted methods of this new CEO. No one dared to pull tricks behind my back anymore. The company's power was firmly controlled in my hands. One day, while I was processing documents, Matt called. "Caleb, look at the news. Your fake brother is on the local news." I raised an eyebrow and opened the news site. A striking headline instantly caught my eye. Former Dynasty heir falls to streets, arrested for theft, claims, "I am a Thorne." In the news photo, Julian was wearing filthy clothes, pressed down by two police officers, his face full of unwillingness and resentment. The report said after being kicked out of the Thorne house, penniless and unable to endure hardship, he quickly spent all the money he had on him. In the end, he actually went to a convenience store to steal food and was caught red-handed. After being caught, he shamelessly screamed at the police that he was the young master of the Thorne family and would make them pay. The result, naturally, was being treated as a lunatic and taught a harsh lesson. I looked at this news, the smile on my lips deepening. Truly satisfying. The little prince who once lived in luxury and spent money like water was now a prisoner who stole petty things. This taste of falling from the clouds into the mud must be very unpleasant. Ha ha ha, serves him right. Mac laughed gloatingly on the other end. "Caleb, you've finally vented your anger. This isn't enough." I closed the news page, voice cold. He owes me more than this. I dialed Stevens. "Contact the precinct holding Julian for me. Say I want to visit him as a victim's family member." In the precinct interrogation room, I saw Julian. Not seen for a few days, he had completely lost his human shape. Greasy hair, face full of grime, eyes empty, like a real homeless person. Seeing me walk in wearing brand names, looking bright and beautiful, his eyes instantly turned red, filled with jealousy and resentment. "Caleb," he lunged from the chair, but was firmly locked by handcuffs. "It's you. You caused this. You robber. You stole everything from me." I pulled out a chair and sat in front of him, looking at him leisurely. "I stole everything from you? Julian, get this straight. Those things were never yours to begin with. You lived in my house, spent my money, stole my parents, enjoyed my life for 22 years. Now, I'm just taking back what belongs to me. How does that make me a robber? You." Julian was choked speechless by me, only able to roar futilely like a trapped beast. I pulled a bank card from my pocket and placed it on the table in front of him. "There's $10,000 in here." Julian's eyes lit up instantly. He thought I was here to give him money. "The password is your birthday." I continued, "But you might not know that day is actually my birthday too. I'll use this $10,000 to buy one thing from you." "What?" Julian asked subconsciously. I leaned in front of him, looking at his greedy eyes, and said word for word, "I want you to admit to the media personally that you are not the Thorne family's son, that you are a counterfeit. I want you to tell them all about how you occupied the nest, how you squandered money, and how you bullied me all these years. I want you to be ruined, to become the laughingstock of the entire city." Julian's face turned pale instantly. He understood my intention. I didn't just want to take everything from him. I wanted to completely destroy him. "Keep dreaming," he screamed. "I'd rather die than let you succeed." "Is that so?" I smiled, taking the bank card back. "It seems you still don't recognize your situation." I stood up, walked to the door, looked back at him, wearing a devilish smile. "You will agree, because life in hell has only just begun." After I left, I immediately called Stevens again. "Notify all media partners of our company to push the news of Julian's theft arrest to the top of the trending search. I want everyone in the city to recognize the face of this former young master. Also, find a few people to take care of his life in the detention center." My voice was cold without a trace of emotion. I want him to know what it means to beg for life and beg for death. Stevens shuddered on the other end, but immediately agreed. "Yes, CEO Sterling. I'll do it right away." He knew I was going to utterly destroy Julian. But so what? A trivial counterfeit versus a new CEO holding great power. He knew clearly which side to stand on. In the following days, Julian became completely famous. The front pages of major news media were all about his theft scandal. The internet was covered with ridicule and abuse toward him. Hashtag former heir prisoner, hashtag counterfeit occupying nest, hashtag modern farmer ant snake. Eye-catching tags were firmly pasted on him, and his days in the detention center were unspeakable misery. The people I arranged used various methods every day to let him experience living hell. Just 3 days. Julian completely broke down, crying and shouting, begging to see me, saying he would do anything, just begging me to let him go. I came to the interrogation room again. This time, seeing me, it was like seeing his savior. He scrambled to my feet. Mr. Sterling, I was wrong. I was really wrong. Please let me go. I'll say anything. I'll do anything. He hugged my leg, crying like a 3-year-old. I kicked him away in disgust. Why didn't you think of this earlier? I threw the bank card and a voice recorder in front of him. Speak. Say everything you should and shouldn't say. Julian, as if granted amnesty, picked up the recorder and confessed everything he had done over the years to the lens, in full detail. He admitted being a fake, admitted squandering money, admitted how he humiliated me time and again with Victoria's indulgence. His voice was full of regret and fear. I listened to his confession, but my heart held only cold indifference. Now he knows he's wrong? Too late. After getting the recording, I didn't look at him again and turned to leave. Behind me came his desperate cry. Mr. Sterling, the money. My money. I didn't look back. I certainly wouldn't give him that $10,000. I just wanted him to understand that despair after hope is the most torturous thing. That afternoon, I anonymously sent the recording to major media outlets. It sent shockwaves through the city. If the previous theft news only made Julian a laughingstock, this recording's exposure completely nailed him and the Thorne family to the wall of shame. Public opinion boiled over. Everyone was cursing Julian's shamelessness, sympathizing with my experience, and accusing the Thorne family of injustice and coldness. Thorne Enterprises' stock price plummeted in response. In one day, billions evaporated. Countless calls poured into the Thorne home and company, all questioning and condemning. The Thorne family fell into an unprecedented crisis. And the instigator of all this, me, was sitting leisurely in the CEO office, sipping top-grade Blue Mountain coffee, admiring the sunset outside the window. The phone rang. A strange number. I answered. A woman's hoarse, exhausted, and pleading voice came from the other end. Caleb, I beg you stop. It was Victoria. Let's talk. In a private room of a high-end cafe downtown. I saw Victoria. Not seen for a few days, she seemed like a different person. The once high and mighty, radiant business queen now looked haggard, eyes sunken, her expensive Chanel suit unable to hide her utter despondency and fatigue. Seeing me, her eyes moved with complex emotions, lips parting as if to say something, but ultimately turning into a bitter sigh. Seat. She pointed to the seat opposite. I sat down unceremoniously, taking a sip of the coffee in front of me. What is it? If you're here to beg for your counterfeit brother, don't bother. My words, like a needle, made her tremble all over. She looked up, those once bright phoenix eyes now full of bloodshot veins and pain. He has been ruined by you, she said hoarsely. Theft, prison, ruined reputation. Caleb, you've already won. Why won't you stop? Why do you have to be so absolute, dragging the Thorne family down too? Absolute. I laughed, as if I heard the biggest joke. Victoria, you're talking to me about absolute now? Back then, to pave the road for him, you didn't hesitate to damage the company's interests by $1 billion. Did you think that was absolute? Back then, to protect him, you forced me to take the fall time and again, trampling me underfoot. Did you think that was absolute? Back then, your family enjoyed domestic bliss while I struggled at the bottom like an orphan, afraid to even take a sick day, because one day off meant losing a $300 attendance bonus. At that time, did you think it was absolute? My questioning, sentence after sentence, like sledgehammers, smashed fiercely into her heart. Her face turned pale inch by inch, her body trembling uncontrollably. Right? What right did she have to accuse me? She opened her mouth, finding she couldn't say a word. All defenses seemed so pale in the face of cruel reality. I am sorry. A long time later, she squeezed those 3 words from her throat. Her voice was so light, like a mosquito's buzz. I sneered. Victoria, do you think a flimsy I'm sorry can wipe away 20 years of my pain? Let me tell you, impossible. I stood up, looking down at her, eyes cold as Antarctic glaciers. I will not only destroy Julian, I will destroy you, destroy the entire Thorne family. I want you all to pay the price of having nothing for your stupidity and coldness. I want you all to taste what it's like to fall from the clouds into hell. Victoria looked at me in disbelief, eyes full of fear and despair. She probably never thought a person could hate to this extent. You're crazy, she muttered. That's right, I am crazy. I leaned down, whispering in her ear with a voice only we could hear, brutally. Driven crazy by your own hands. Finished, I straightened up, adjusted my suit, and turned to walk away. At the door, I stopped without looking back. Oh, right, forgot to tell you. I've contacted a new partner for the South City project. The price is $1.5 billion lower than Apex Construction. Tomorrow, I'll hold a press conference to announce this to the public. At that time, you can look forward to seeing just how much Thorne Enterprises stock will plunge or soar. Finished, I opened the door and strode away. Behind me came the crisp sound of shattering porcelain and a woman's suppressed, broken sobbing. The next day's press conference was a massive success. When I announced that Thorne Enterprises would restart the South City project with a higher quality partner at a lower price, the entire capital market was shaken. This not only meant the company recovered huge losses, but also sent a strong signal to the outside world. Thorne Enterprises had completely shed the shadows of the past and welcomed a sharper, more iron-fisted helmsman. After the conference, Thorne Enterprises stock rebounded instantly, soaring all the way, even exceeding the high point before the scandal broke. I, Caleb Sterling, was deified in one battle. The company's shareholders and employees looked at me with fanatical worship. They knew that following me, the company could move toward a more brilliant future. The Thorne family, however, became the complete losers in this storm. Victoria, notorious due to the previous scandal, could no longer gain a foothold in the industry. Richard, exhausted by the violent stock fluctuations, fell ill and completely relinquished power. Eleanor, the once elegant lady, now washed her face with tears every day, guarding a sickbed husband and a broken home, regretting everything. They lost everything: power, status, wealth, and the son they once took the most pride in. 1 month later, I met Mac for drinks at the roadside barbecue stand we used to frequent. Caleb, you're a billionaire CEO now. Still eating a place like this? Not afraid of lowering your status? Mac teased me while gnawing on a chicken wing. I smiled, taking a sip of beer. After too many delicacies, I still feel the skewers here have the most flavor. Seriously, what do you plan to do next? Mac asked. That Thorne family, do you plan to keep punishing them? I shook my head. No need. Julian was ruined, spending the rest of his life in prison. Victoria was betrayed by all, unable to recover. Richard and Eleanor were suffering in endless regret and illness. They had already paid the price for their actions. My revenge was done. Then, they're your biological parents after all. You don't plan to forgive them? Mac asked carefully. I was silent for a moment, looking at the city lights in the distance, speaking slowly. Mac, remember what I said back then? Getting the golden ticket to a dynasty was never about fighting for that laughable affection. They want to use family ties to kidnap me, use guilt to compensate me. Unfortunately, I'm long past being the child who craves parental love. Forgive? I scoffed, draining the beer in my glass. They aren't worthy. My life from today on is lived only for myself. The sunlight is just right. The future is promising. The era belonging to me has just begun. Story complete.